Please, don't hurt me, I can't walk. Her scream cut through the storm as she crawled across the alley floor. Then, out of the darkness, a single dad stepped between her and the danger, his child clinging to his coat. But when their eyes met, he realized this terrified CEO wasn't just running for her life. She was running from a secret that could destroy them both. Before we jump in, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from? And what kind of story do you crave next? Drop your answer in the comments below. If stories like this grip your heart and refuse to let go, well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I've got another powerful story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's get into today's story. Rain hammered the alley like a verdict, turning cobblestones into mirrors of fractured neon. Adrienne Thomas huddled against the rough brick, her blue suit a sodden ruin, braids heavy with water that traced cold paths down her neck. The briefcase dug into her ribs, her shield, her secret, crammed with the digital ghosts of betrayal. Her ankle screamed with every shift, swollen and useless, the fall that stripped her empire bare. Footsteps splashed closer, deliberate, owned by the man who'd once whispered vows like weapons. Damon's shadow stretched long under the flickering street lamp, his face a mask of possession twisted by fury. Adrienne, he growled, low and laced with venom, close enough now that she could smell the cologne masking his rage. She curled tighter, breath ragged, the storm swallowing her whisper. Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk. The words cracked open something primal, fear not of boardrooms or betrayals, but of the body failing when the mind still roared for control. Lightning clawed the sky, thunder vibrating through her bones, and she pressed her palms to the wet ground, willing it to swallow her whole. He loomed, fist half raised, the air thick with the promise of what came next. Then, a small voice pierced the downpour. Daddy, look, she's scared. From the alley's throat emerged Bernard Bruce, broad frame cutting through the sheets of rain, his 5-year-old daughter Elsie balanced on one hip in her yellow raincoat, hood framing her wide, curious eyes. He was soaked through, grey tea clinging to the quiet muscle of a man who'd carried heavier burdens than weather, late shifts at the repair shop, nights piecing together bedtime stories from exhaustion. But that plea, raw as an exposed nerve, rooted him. No plan, no hero script. Just the echo of his own losses, the wife who'd slipped away too soon, leaving him to guard this tiny light against the dark. He eased Elsie down, her small hand clutching his jeans. Stay right here, Bug, Daddy's got this. His voice was gravel-steady, not a shout but a line drawn in the mud. He stepped forward, boots splashing deliberate, eyes locking on Damon with the unflinching calm of someone who'd stared down flames and grief alike. Damon wheeled, surprise flickering before hardening. Back off, this ain't your business. But Bernard didn't advance, didn't raise a voice. He just stood, rain carving rivers down his stubbled jaw, presence a wall of unyielding decency. It is now. Walk away. The words hung, simple as a vow, charged with the certainty of a man who'd lost enough to know what wasn't for sale. Damon hesitated, the storm's roar filling the beat, then spat a curse, shadows claiming him as he melted into the night. Adrienne's chest heaved, disbelief crashing harder than the rain. Bernard knelt slow, hands open like an offering, close enough for her to catch the faint scent of engine oil and soap beneath the wet. Easy now. You're safe. I've got you. His gaze held hers, not pity, but recognition, the kind that saw the woman beneath the wreckage. Elsie edged closer, peeking with a thumb in her mouth, lightning etching her silhouette gold. Adrienne's vision blurred, not just from tears but the weightlifting, her body slumping as the world tilted. In his arms, cradled against the steady drum of his heart, she faded, broken, but held. She didn't know his name yet, or that this alley marked the fracture where her armored life would finally breathe. But in that hush after thunder, something irrevocable stirred, the first fragile thread of trust, weaving through the storm. Bernard carried her through the drizzle's fade, Elsa's tiny fingers trailing rain from his sleeve, up 3 flights to a door that creaked like an old confession. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet pulse of a life rebuilt from scraps, cran-scrawled walls, a kettle's distant sigh, where a single dad stitched his days together with coarse-ass hands and unspoken aches, unaware the knock at his door had just ushered in the unraveling of everything he thought he knew. Adrienne stirred to the scent of ginger and soap, sharp and grounding, cutting through the fog of unconsciousness like a lifeline tossed into choppy waters. Her eyelids flooded open, heavy as lead, and for a disorienting moment, she thought she was back in her penthouse suite, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, where the air always carried a faint chill from the AC humming like a judgmental whisper. But no. This was warmer, softer, the kind of warmth that seeped into bones rather than echoing off marble. Golden lamplight pooled on scuffed hardwood floors, casting long shadows from mismatched furniture that looked like it had been salvaged from thrift store tales. A quilt, faded blue, patched with squares of flannel, draped over her legs, its edges frayed from too many washes, too many nights of quiet desperation. She shifted, and pain lanced up her ankle, a hot reminder of the alley's betrayal. The room came into focus, a small living space crammed with life's unpolished edges. Bookshelves sagged under paperbacks with dog-eared spines, everything from dog-eared thrillers to children's picture books about brave little engines. A low coffee table bore the scars of crayons and coffee rings, and on the wall, a gallery of drawings fluttered like captured dreams. Stick-figure families under rainbow arches, sons with smiling faces, a daddy holding a girl's hand against a stormy sky. Raindrops ticked against the windowpane, a rhythmic Morse code that spoke of storms past but not forgotten. Where was she? Her pulse quickened, the CEO's instincts kicking in like muscle memory. Scan for exits, assess threats, calculate leverage. The briefcase. Her hand flew to her side, fingers brushing the hard edge tucked against the couch cushions. Relief flooded her, sharp and fleeting, chased by a wave of something darker, vulnerability. She was in a stranger's home, her suit rumpled and salt-stiff, braids half undone and spilling like dark rivers over the pillow. No phone, no allies, just the ache in her leg and the weight of secrets that could topple empires. Damon's face flashed in her mind, his snarl, the glint of possession in his eyes, and she bolted upright, ignoring the protest of her body. The movement sent a jolt through her, and she bit back a gasp. Footsteps pattered from the kitchen, soft but sure, and there he was, the man from the alley, silhouetted against the warm glow of a single bulb. He carried a steaming mug in one hand, the other wiping absently at a damp spot on his grey tee. Up close, in the lamplight's mercy, he looked less like a shadow and more like a map of quiet endurance, stubble shadowing a jaw set with resolve, eyes the color of worn denim, threaded with lines that spoke of laughter long ago and grief more recent. His hair, dark and tousled, curled at the nape from the rain's lingering kiss. He wasn't handsome in the polished way of boardroom suits. He was real, rough-hewn, the kind of solid that didn't bend under pressure. "You're awake," he said, voice low and even, like gravel smoothed by a river. He set the mug on the table, a chipped ceramic thing painted with faded daisies, and eased into the armchair across from her, giving her space without making it obvious. "Didn't want to wake you. Thought you could use the rest." Adrienne's throat tightened. Rest. The word felt foreign, a luxury she traded for power plays and midnight mergers. She pulled the quilt higher, a flimsy barrier against the exposure clawing at her chest. Who was this man? Why bring her here, into his world, when he could have called the cops or left her to the rain? The thought twisted like a knife. Kindness was a transaction in her life, always with strings attached, favors owed, power exchanged. This felt like a trap, or worse, a pity she didn't deserve. Her pride reared up, hot and familiar. Thank you, she managed, the words clipped, her voice still raw from the storm. But I need to go. My ankle isn't ready for stairs yet. He nodded toward her leg, where a clean ace bandage wrapped it snugly, the edges taped with precision. I cleaned it up best I could. No breaks, I don't think, but you twisted it bad. Swelling's down some, but walking on it now. That's asking for trouble. She glanced down, fingers tracing the bandage's edge. His work, steady, unassuming. No medical degree, she'd bet, but hands that knew how to hold things together. It unnerved her, this casual competence, the way he tended to her without fanfare or expectation. In her world, care came with NDAs and agendas. Here, it was just done. You didn't have to, she said, sharper than she intended, the CEO's edge slipping through. I'm not your responsibility. He leaned back, elbows on knees, studying her with that unflinching gaze, not prying, but present, like he was seeing the cracks she'd spent years sealing with steel. The rain ticked on, a counterpoint to the hum of a kettle winding down in the kitchen, its whistle fading into steam-scented air. Maybe not, he replied, no defensiveness, just quiet truth. But leaving you out there didn't sit right. And it's not about owing me anything. You needed a hand up. I had one to give. Elsa's voice piped up from the hallway, small and bright as a sunbeam piercing clouds. Daddy, is the lady awake? Can I show her my bear? A patter of feet, and the girl peeked around the corner, yellow raincoat shed for footy pajamas dotted with stars. Her curls were a wild halo, eyes wide with that unfiltered curiosity only children wield like a superpower. In her arms, a plush bear dangled, one ear floppy from too much love. Bernard's face softened, a crack in the armor that made Adrianne's chest ache unexpectedly. In a bit, Bug. Let her catch her breath. He ruffled Elsa's hair as she retreated, the gesture so tender it bordered on sacred, a father's quiet vow etched in motion. But there was a shadow there, in the way his hand lingered a second too long, as if anchoring himself against a tide only he could feel. What was it? Loss. The kind that hollowed you out and left you rebuilding with whatever scraps the world didn't claim? Adrianne looked away, heat rising in her cheeks. Don't get sucked in. This was temporary, a detour, not a destination. She'd call a car service, get to her lawyer's office, expose Damon's rot before he spun the narrative. But the thought soured in her mouth. Trust no one. That had been her mantra, forged in boardrooms where smiles had knives and her father's guidance meant chains disguised as legacy. Damon had just been the latest link, his lover merger clause she'd ignored until it choked her. The mug caught her eye, ginger tea, steam curling like a question. She reached for it, the warmth seeping into her palms a stark contrast to the chill that had settled in her bones. One sip, and it bloomed on her tongue, spicy, soothing, with a hint of honey that softened the burn. This is good, she admitted, hating how small she sounded. Old remedy, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips, the first real one she'd seen, crinkling the corners of his eyes. Keeps the inflammation down. My wife used to swear by it after long days. The words slipped out casual, but they landed like stones in still water, ripples of something deeper. Wife. Past tense. The quiet sadness she'd glimpsed sharpened into focus. The drawings on the fridge, a photo half hidden on the mantel, a woman with Elsa's curls, laughing in a sunlit park. Gone. How? When? The questions piled up, unbidden, but she swallowed them. Not her business. Not her pain to probe. Yet here she was, sipping tea in his grief-tended space, the rains took a lullaby that mocked her restlessness. Safety flickered at the edges of her awareness, tentative, like dawn light after endless night. No locked doors, no demands, just this man who'd face down her nightmare without a second thought. Why? What drove someone to risk it all for a stranger's plea in the dark? She set the mug down, fingers trembling slightly. You could have been hurt back there. He's not the type to back down easy. Bernard shrugged, but his eyes held hers, steady as an anchor. Seen worse than a guy with a bad temper. And you? Looked like you'd been through enough without me adding to it. He paused, the kettle's silence now, leaving only the rain's soft percussion. You don't have to tell me what happened. Just rest. World'll wait till morning. The words hung, an invitation wrapped in absolution. No interrogation, no leverage sought. Just permission to breathe. Adrianne's throat closed, tears pricking unbidden. Rest. When had anyone ever offered that without a price? Pride warred with the exhaustion crashing over her, the kind that came from running not just from Damon, but from the cage she'd built around her own heart. She wanted to snap back, to reclaim control with a curt thank you and a demand for her phone. But her body betrayed her, sinking deeper into the couch, the quilt a reluctant embrace. Elsie reappeared then, bear in tow, clambering onto the arm of Bernard's chair with the fearless grace of childhood. Mr. Bear says hi, she announced, thrusting the plush forward. Its button eyes gleamed in the lamplight, stitched smile unwavering. He's brave. He fought a dragon once. Did you know dragons aren't real, but they feel real when you're scared? Adrian blinked, caught off guard by the girl's earnestness. The words echoed too close. Dragons in alleys, shadows with fiancés' faces. Yeah, she murmured, managing a watery smile as Elsie plopped the bear into her lap. Soft fur, worn from hugs, carried the faint scent of lavender detergent. He looks like he won. Elsie beamed, then turned to her father. Daddy, can we make hot chocolate? For the lady. Rainy nights need chocolate. Bernard chuckled, a low rumble that filled the room like hearth fire. All right, Bug. But only if you promise no marshmallows in your hair this time. As father and daughter retreated to the kitchen, their murmurs weaving through the air, spoons clinking, milk frothing, Adrianne sat frozen, bear clutched to her chest. The flicker grew, that ember of safety, warming against the chill of distrust. But questions gnawed. Why risk it? For her. A stranger with blood on her ledger and a briefcase full of bombs? And him, Bernard, she'd overheard the name in Elsa's chatter, What ghosts walked his quiet sadness? The lines around his eyes, the way he touched the photo's frame when he thought no one watched. A story there, unfinished, bleeding into this one. She shifted, foot brushing the floor, and froze. By the door, in the lamplight's edge, sat her shoes, dried, the leather softened, a neat row of stitches mending the tear from her frantic run. Beside them, a scrap of paper, handwriting rough but deliberate. Don't go yet. It's still raining. Her breath caught, heart stuttering. Who did this? And why did it feel like the first real stitch in her unraveling soul? Hey, if this moment of unexpected kindness is hitting you right in the feels, like, have you ever had a stranger show up exactly when you needed them most? Drop a comment below. What's your story of quiet heroism? The rain picked up again outside, a curtain against the world, but inside, the apartment held its breath. Adrian stared at the note, fingers itching to crumple it, to flee before the warmth could seep too deep. But her ankle throbbed a warning, and deeper still, something whispered, stay. Just for now. The conflict twisted like roots in her chest, pride screaming escape, vulnerability curling tighter around the flicker of safety. She'd built her life on control, on never needing, never breaking. But here, in this borrowed space, with a child's bear in her lap and a man's stitches on her shoes, the wall she'd armored cracked just a little wider. Bernard returned with 2 mugs, steam rising like secrets unveiled, Elsie trailing with a plate of slightly lopsided graham crackers. Thought you might be hungry, he said, handing her one, his fingers brushing hers, brief, electric, gone. No intent, just contact, the kind that grounded rather than claimed. She took it, nibbling the edge, the sweetness crumbling on her tongue as Elsie launched into a tale of Mr. Bear's latest adventure, a quest through a cardboard castle to rescue a lost princess from the tickly rain monster. Adrian listened, half mesmerized, the girl's voice a balm against the storm's echo. Elsa's hands waved, painting the air with invisible colors, her laughter bubbling up pure and unscarred. And then the bear said, roar. You can't keep her, rain monster, 'cause princesses are for sharing. The girl paused, eyes locking on Adrian's with sudden intensity. Are you a princess? You have fancy clothes. But they're wet. The question landed soft but piercing. Princess. Once, she'd been called queen, of deals, of destinies. Now, just a woman with braids undone and a heart laid bare. Not anymore, Adrian whispered, the admission slipping free before pride could cage it. Elsie tilted her head, considering, then crawled onto the couch beside her, small body warm and trusting. That's okay. Mr. Bear says everyone gets a new crown sometimes. Bernard watched from his chair, mug paused mid-sip, his quiet sadness softening into something like wonder. The lamplight caught the scar on his knuckle, faint, silvery, from some long-ago fix gone wrong. What else did it hide? A fire he couldn't outrun? A night when the world took more than it gave? The microhook tugged at her. Why him, this fixer of dryers and fractures, risking a confrontation that could have ended in sirens or worse? For her plea? Or for the echo of his own? The evening unfolded in fragments, Elsa's chatter fading to yawns, Bernard tucking her into bed with a story murmured low, the rain's tick slowing to a drizzle. Adrienne sipped her tea, the ginger settling her nerves, but the tension coiled tighter. Vulnerability clashed with her core. She didn't trust this ease, this unearned grace. Every kindness screamed ulterior motive. What did he want? Access to her world. A story to sell? Damon's web had taught her that much. Love as leverage, help as handcuffs. Yet when Bernard returned, settling on the coffee table's edge to recheck her bandage, his touch was feather-light, eyes averted to give her dignity. Pain easing? He asked, voice a rumble in the quiet. A little, she lied, then corrected. Some. Honesty. Unbidden. Dangerous. Good. Try to sleep. Couch pulls out if you need more space. He stood, pausing at the kitchen archway, back to her. Locks on the door. You're safe here. For real. The words lingered as he disappeared, leaving her with the bear, the note, the hum of a life not her own. Safety flickered brighter now, a candle against the draft of doubt. But pride gnawed. How long before she bolted? Before the CEO reclaimed her throne, briefcase in hand, leaving the shelter in the dust? She eased her foot down, testing, and limped to the door under the pretense of water. That's when she saw it fully. The shoes, transformed. The stitches weren't perfect, knots uneven, thread a mismatched brown, but they held, a testament to care unasked. The note's ink had bled slightly from humidity, but the words stood firm. Don't go yet. It's still raining. Her fingers traced the paper, heart fracturing along old lines. Rain or not, the storm inside raged on. But for the first time, in this golden-lit haven, she wondered if staying might not break her, but mend. What if one night changed everything? Morning light filtered through the threadbare curtains like a hesitant promise, spilling golden veins across the living room floor and gilding the edges of Elsa's napkins where rainbows bloomed in wild strokes of crayon. Adrienne lay still on the pull-out couch, the quilt tangled around her like a reluctant truce, her body heavy with the kind of sleep that came jagged, dreams laced with alley shadows and Damon's echoing snarl, chased by glimpses of steady arms and a child's unblinking gaze. The apartment stirred awake around her, a symphony of small sounds, the creak of floorboards under bare feet, the soft scrape of a chair, the faint strum of a guitar from the kitchen, notes plucked lazy and low, weaving through the air like smoke from a distant fire. She propped herself up on one elbow, wincing as her ankle protested with a dull throb, the bandage a papery reminder of the night before. The space felt different in daylight, less sanctuary, more intrusion. Crayon drawings taped to the fridge caught the sun, their colors vivid against the chipped white enamel. A family of 4 under a lopsided sun, though the fourth figure was just an outline, waiting for lines to fill it in. Adrienne's chest tightened. This wasn't her world, polished edges, scheduled silences, power suits starched to perfection. Here, everything breathed, imperfect and alive, from the scuff marks on the baseboards to the faint coffee grounds scattered like confetti on the counter. Safety, unearned and sprawling, pressed against her like the quilt's weight. It terrified her. Run. Always run. That was survival. Cut ties before they bound, leave before you were left. Elsie sat cross-legged at the coffee table, tongue poked out in concentration, her small fist clutching a purple crayon as she arched a rainbow high over a stick figure house. The girl hummed tunelessly, a melody that danced with the guitar's distant echo, her curls a tousled crown catching the light. She didn't look up as Adrienne stirred, lost in her creation, but when the couch groaned, she beamed, a flash of uncomplicated joy that hit Adrienne like sunlight on frost. Morning. I made you a rainbow. See? It goes all the way to the clouds. Daddy says clouds hold the rain till it's ready to dance again. Adrienne forced a smile, the motion foreign on her lips, as she swung her good leg over the edge of the bed. The napkin rainbow trembled in Elsa's outstretched hand, colors bleeding slightly where the crayon had pressed too hard, purple smudging into blue, a testament to enthusiasm unchecked. Why did this shake her? A child's scribble, offered without agenda, no boardroom pitch or merger clause attached. In her life, gifts came wrapped in expectation, her father's opportunities that chain her to his vision, Damon's diamonds that weighed like anchors. This? Freely given, fragile as the paper it stained. It cracked something in her, a fissure where tenderness seeped in, unfamiliar and aching. She took the napkin, fingers brushing Elsa's tiny ones, warm, sticky with wax, and the contact lingered, electric in its innocence. It's beautiful, she whispered, voice rough from disuse. Thank you, Elsie. The girl shrugged, already on to the next arc, green this time, looping wild. You're welcome. Daddy makes breakfast on rainbow days. Pancakes with smiley faces. Her chatter filled the space, a buffer against the silence that Adrienne craved and feared in equal measure. But beneath it, the instinct clawed. Get up. Get out. Call the car, summon the lawyers, reclaim the narrative before Damon twisted it into her downfall. Unearned safety was a lie, a velvet trap. She'd learned that young, her mother's absence a void filled with lessons in self-reliance, her father's empire a forge that hammered weakness into ash. Staying meant owing, and owing meant losing control. From the kitchen, the guitar's strum resolved into a familiar melody, something old, folk-tinged, about rivers and roads not taken. Bernard's voice joined it, low and murmured, not singing but humming along as pots clanged softly. Steam curled from mugs on a counter, carrying the rich, earthy scent of coffee mingled with cinnamon, warm tones bathing the room in hues of amber and rose. Adrienne gripped the napkin tighter, the rainbow's edge crumpling under her thumb. She couldn't stay. Not in this warmth that whispered of permanency, not with the briefcase's secrets burning a hole beside her, its contents a ticking bomb of embezzlement and lies that could shatter Vanguard International, and her with it. Limping to the kitchen archway, she leaned against the frame, the cool wood grounding her. Bernard stood at the stove, broad back to her, flipping pancakes with a spatula that had seen better days, the handle wrapped in duct tape. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and etched with scars, faint silver lines, one jagged across his wrist like a lightning strike frozen in time. What hid behind them? Not just old injuries, she sensed, but stories carved deep, a life of fixing what broke, perhaps breaking in the process. The guitar rested against the wall, strings humming faintly from the last chord, and a radio played softly in the background, the announcer's voice a murmur about clear skies after the storm. He glanced over his shoulder, that steady gaze catching hers, and something in his expression, softened by the morning light, shadowed by whatever ghosts those scars held, made her pause. "Sleep okay?" he asked, plating a pancake with deliberate care, steam rising in lazy spirals. "Well enough." Lie. The truth was a tangle of nightmares and half-waking terrors, but admitting weakness? Not yet. Not to him. She nodded at the scars, curiosity slipping free before pride could leash it. "Those? From work." Bernard paused, spatula mid-air, then set it down with a soft clink. He rolled his sleeve lower, casual, but his eyes flickered, a microhook tugging at the veil. "Some. Dryer belts snap sometimes. Others." He trailed off, tracing the jagged one with a thumb, the motion absent, haunted. "Life's got its own wrenches." No elaboration, just that quiet sadness from the night before, deepened in daylight, hinting at fractures she'd glimpsed in the photo. The wife, gone too soon, leaving him to solder a world back together one small fix at a time. Why did it pull at her? This man, hiding pain behind practicality, risking it all for her plea. Echoes of her own armor, perhaps, scars unseen, from boardroom battles and a father's cold forge. Elsie scampered and then, napkin rainbows clutched like treasures, climbing onto a stool with a grunt. "Pancakes. Can the lady have one with 2 smiles? She's sad like when I miss mommy." The words landed like a dropped plate, shattering the warm tones. Adrienne froze, steam from the mugs blurring her vision, the guitar's echo now a dirge in her ears. "Mommy." The outline on the fridge, the hum in Bernard's voice. Loss, raw and recent, woven into this home like the duct tape on the spatula. Bernard knelt to Elsa's level, face gentle, hand cupping her cheek. "Hey, bug. Remember what we say. It's okay to miss her. But we're making new smiles today." He straightened, plating the pancakes, smiley faces lopsided but earnest, syrup pooling golden, and slid one toward Adrienne. "Sit. Eat. World's not ending on an empty stomach." She eased onto the stool, the wood warm from Elsa's earlier perch, and the scent envelop her, butter melting, cinnamon dusting the air like forgotten wishes. Elsie dug in with glee, syrup smearing her chin, while Bernard poured coffee, black and steaming, into a mug with a chipped handle. "Sugar," he offered, voice a low anchor. Adrienne shook her head, sipping instead, the bitterness grounding her against the sweetness threatening to dissolve her edges. They ate in companionable quiet at first, broken only by Elsa's chatter, about school friends and a playground dragon that turned out to be a swing set. But the tension coiled in Adrienne's gut, instinct screaming escape. This tenderness, glimpsed in the way Bernard wiped syrup from Elsa's chin without a word, in the soft strum of guitar that said he'd learned to play for 2, not 1, it was a foreign country. She'd never known it, not really. Her childhood, nannies with clipboards, her father barking orders over breakfast mergers. Damon, touches that claimed, never cherished. This? Quiet, unassuming, a father's hand lingering on a daughter's shoulder, eyes crinkling at her rainbow tails. It shook her deeper than Elsa's kindness, because it mirrored what she'd starved for, unearned, unwavering. "Why?" The word escaped her, soft as the steam rising between them. Bernard looked up, fork paused, Elsie munching obliviously. "Why do this? For me. A stranger. You don't know me." He set his fork down, the clink echoing like a confession in the warm light. "Knew enough last night. Feel like that. It sticks. Reminds you of your own." His gaze drifted to the window, where the curtains filtered sun into patterns on the table, steam curling like unspoken grief. "Lost my Sarah 2 years back. Car accident. Elsie was 3. World narrows fast after that. You learn to spot when someone's slipping." The scars, now she saw them clear. The jagged one from wrenching a door in the rain-slicked wreck, perhaps, or just the mark of holding on when everything let go. What else hid there? Nights alone with a toddler's cries, mornings stitching normalcy from nightmares? Adrienne's throat closed, the pancake turning to ash. Sarah. The photo, the hums, the rainbows drawn with one less hand. Tenderness flooded her then, not her own but witnessed, a father's quiet rebuild, scars as badges of battles fought in silence. It glimpsed a world she'd never touched, love that mended without demanding tribute. Tears pricked, hot and traitorous. "I'm sorry," she murmured, the words inadequate, pride fracturing under the weight. Elsie looked up, syrup-sticky face solemn. "Daddy cries sometimes. When he thinks I'm asleep." She reached across the table, small hand patting Adrianne's. "Sometimes grown-ups cry, too. It's okay. Mr. Bear says tears make room for more rainbows." The dialogue hung, simple as the napkin art, profound as the scars. Bernard's eyes met Adrianne's over Elsa's head, a shared flicker of understanding, raw and real. "Yeah," he said softly, voice roughened by memory. "They do." The moment stretched, warm tones wrapping them like the steam from forgotten mugs, the guitar strings vibrating faintly in the hush. But Adrianne's instinct surged, panic threading through the tenderness. She couldn't accept this, unearned safety, glimpses of a life she didn't deserve. Damon would be hunting, her board calling, the briefcase a siren song of duty. Run. Before the tears made room for something she couldn't control. She pushed back from the table, chair scraping like a warning. "I should go. Thank you, for everything." Limping to her feet, she tested the ankle, ignoring the fresh stab of pain, briefcase clutched like a shield. Bernard rose, concern etching his brow, but she waved him off, pride her crutch now. One step, two, toward the door, freedom's threshold. The third buckled her. Pain exploded, white-hot, and the world tilted, floor rushing up. She gasped, arms flailing, the napkin rainbow fluttering from her grip like a fallen promise. Strong hands caught her, Bernard's, steady and sure, pulling her against his chest before she shattered. Time slowed, his heartbeat a thunder beneath her ear, scars brushing her arm in the warm light. "Easy," he murmured, voice a lifeline. "I've got you." If a child's words like "sometimes grown-ups cry," too, ever cracked your armor wide open, share in the comments. But in that catch, as the door loomed unopened and Elsa's wide eyes watched from the table, Adrianne realized. Running had just become the hardest choice of all. The silence between them thickened, charged with the unspoken. What if mending meant staying put? Bernard held her there for a beat longer than necessary, his arms a steady cage, not of possession, but of presence, the kind that didn't demand release. The warmth of him seeped through her rumpled blouse, a contrast to the cool hardwood pressing against her good knee where she'd half fallen. Elsa's gaze from the table was a wide, unblinking pool, her fork hovering mid-air over a syrup-smeared pancake, forgotten in the hush. The morning light slanted sharper now, catching dust motes in lazy spirals, turning the kitchen into a fragile diorama of interrupted escape. "I'm okay," Adrianne murmured finally, the words more breath than conviction, her hands pressing against his chest to create distance. But her fingers lingered on the soft cotton of his shirt, tracing the faint ridge of a scar beneath, another hidden map, another unanswered pull. He eased back slowly, hands sliding to her elbows in a guide rather than a grip, helping her steady without stealing her agency. Just twisted wrong. He nodded, no judgment in the motion, just the quiet assessment of someone who'd bandaged more than ankles. "Couch'll hold you better than pride right now. Come on." His voice was low, threaded with that gravel edge softened by concern, and he guided her back to the living room with one arm loose around her waist, support, not claim. Elsie hopped down from a stool, napkin rainbow clutched like a talisman, and trailed them, her small voice piping up to shatter the tension. "Daddy's good at catches. Like when I fell off the swing. He says gravity's just a hug gone wrong." Adrianne managed a watery chuckle, the sound foreign and fragile, as Bernard settled her onto the couch with the care of handling fine china. The pull-out bed was still half-made from her restless night, sheets twisted like the knot in her gut. He fetched a pillow, propping her ankle with clinical gentleness, then straightened, rubbing the back of his neck, a tell of his own unease, perhaps, at the intimacy of the moment. "Stay put. I'll clean up breakfast. Elsa's got stories to tell if you're up for it." As father and daughter retreated to the kitchen, clinks of plates and Elsa's animated whispers filled the air. Adrianne sank into the cushions, heart hammering against her ribs. The instinct to run hadn't dulled. It roared now, fueled by the terror of this vulnerability. She'd clawed her way to the top of Vanguard by outrunning weakness. Merger sealed before dawn, competitors crushed under calculated smiles. Damon had been the pinnacle of that illusion. Love as alliance, his ringer contract clause. But here, in this sun-dappled space with its crane confessions, the walls she'd built felt paper-thin. Staying meant cracking open, and cracking meant flood. The day unfolded in a haze of enforced rest, the rain outside easing to a patter that mirrored her slowing pulse. Bernard moved through the apartment like a quiet current, washing dishes with efficient splashes, strumming idle chords on the guitar that wove folk melodies into the afternoon, low and lamenting, about lost roads and found harbors. Elsie orbited him, a comet of energy, dragging out puzzles and picture books, her chatter a balm Adrienne absorbed from the couch like sunlight through a cracked window. Lunch was simple: grilled cheese with tomato soup, the kind that steamed with childhood ghosts, served on trays balanced on knees. Adrienne ate mechanically at first, then slower, savoring the melt of cheddar and the tang of tomato, flavors untainted by five-star pretense. By late afternoon, as the light shifted to amber, slanting long through the curtains, Bernard pulled a small wooden box from a shelf, threadbare, its lid scarred from years of use. He settled into the armchair across from her, needle and thread in hand, and lifted her torn blazer from where it had dried stiffly over a chair back. The fabric, once a power blue armor from some Milan atelier, bore the alley scars, a jagged rip at the shoulder where branches had snagged her flight, threads frayed like nerves exposed. "You don't have to," Adrienne started, but he waved her off with a half-smile, the needle already piercing cloth in steady, unhurried arcs. "Can't leave it like that. Ruin a good jacket." His focus narrowed, eyes on the seam, the lamplight, switched on against the gathering dusk, casting his face in warm pools and shadows. Candlelight would come later, but for now, the bulb's glow sufficed, flickering faintly as if in sympathy with the easing rain outside, drops now sporadic ticks against the glass. She watched, mesmerized despite herself, the close-up rhythm of his hands, calluses catching the thread, needle flashing silver, each stitch a deliberate knot against unraveling. Trembling hands, hers, now, fingers twisting the quilt's edge, betrayed the storm building inside. Why this? A blazer mended in an afternoon, no invoice attached. In her world, repairs came with board approvals, tailors on retainer, every fix a line item in the ledger of control. Damon's fixes had been worse, whispered apologies after raised voices, jewelry as hush money, his arms locking her in a cage gilded with promises. "I love you enough to protect you," he'd say, key turning in the door of their suite, his eyes not on her but on the empire he coveted through her. The flashback hit like a rogue wave. That night 6 months ago, rain lashing the penthouse windows much like this one, Damon pacing with a tumbler of scotch, his voice coiling tighter. "Sign the papers, Adrienne. It's for us, for the company." Her refusal, the slap of his hand on the desk, then on her wrist, bruising blooms under silk. "You're mine to keep safe." Love, he'd sworn, but it locked the door, the cage snapping shut with a click that echoed her father's earlier lessons. "Power is isolation, darling. Trust no one." Tears welled now, hot and insistent, spilling over as Bernard's needle paused mid-stitch. She swiped at her face, but they came faster, a dam breach after years of repression, boardroom stoicism, midnight mergers swallowed with coffee black as resolve, Damon's grip tightening until she forgot the shape of freedom. The sobs built, raw and wrenching, shoulders shaking as the flood poured out. The father's ambition that orphaned her heart, the fiancé's possession that caged it, the CEO's mask that suffocated it all. Bernard set the needle aside, blazer half-mended in his lap, and crossed to her in 2 strides. He knelt, not touching, just there, hands open on his knees, eyes level with hers in the lamplight's intimate glow. "Hey," he said softly, voice cutting through the rain's fading murmur like a lighthouse beam. "It's all right. Let it out." "I'm not," she gasped, the words fracturing. "I'm not used to this. Being cared for." The admission clawed free, human, and halting, the first crack in her armor, a fissure where light pierced the steel. No strategy here, no leverage, just truth, trembling as her hands did, clasped white-knuckled in her lap. He nodded, slow, the scars on his knuckles silver in the low light. "I know. Doesn't make it less true." A pause, the rain easing to whispers beyond the glass, and then, "Everyone deserves care, even you." The line landed gentle but unyielding, a hook sinking deep into the doubt she'd armored against. Not pity, but parody, the same grace he'd extended to Elsie after Sarah, to himself in the quiet hours when grief stitched him back together one ragged seam at a time. She broke then, fully, head bowing into her hands, sobs echoing off the walls like the rain's final sighs. He didn't rush to fill the silence, just stayed knelt, a steady presence as the years flooded out, the boardroom victories hollowed by loneliness, the father's legacy that left her chained, Damon's lover lock turning slow. "He said he loved me," she whispered through the tears, flashback's grip loosening in the telling. "But it was just bars. Pretty ones, but bars all the same." Bernard's hand moved then, tentative, a touch to her shoulder, thumb brushing a braid damp with emotion. "Love doesn't lock. It opens." Simple words, candlelit in their clarity, though no flame burned yet. The lamp sufficed, its warmth close up on her trembling hands as they unclenched, reaching for the half-mended blazer like an olive branch. The moment stretched, raw and redemptive, the rain's ease outside mirroring the shift within. Her armor cracking, not shattering, allowing the human beneath, a woman, not a title, to breathe. Elsie had vanished to her room earlier, giving space with a child's intuitive grace, but now small feet pattered down the hall, breaking the hush. "Daddy." I finished the picture. Elsie emerged, clutching a fresh sheet of paper, her face alight with purpose. She toddled over, climbing onto the couch beside Adrienne with the bear tucked under one arm, and thrust the drawing forward. Crayon lines bloomed chaotic, a house with a slanted roof, rainbows arching overhead, stick figures, Daddy tall and strong, Elsie small and beaming. And beside them, an empty outline of a woman, curves vague but expectant, waiting for color, for lines to define her place. "That's you," Elsie said, matter-of-fact, thumbing the empty space. "I was waiting for someone to belong." The words hung, a cliffhanger in crayon, the empty outline a mirror to Adrienne's fracturing self, space carved for her, unasked, in this makeshift family. Tears renewed, but softer now, laced with wonder. Belong. The word she'd banished, now offered in a child's fist. If that line from Elsie, "I was waiting for someone to belong," just punched you in the soul, hit the comments. Who's the unexpected family that showed up in your life when you needed it most? The evening candle finally flickered to life on the coffee table, wax dripping slow as secrets, casting the drawing in golden flicker. Adrienne traced the outline, finger trembling on the page, the rain silenced outside. But inside, the pull deepened. What if belonging wasn't a cage, but a seam worth stitching? Night deepened into a hush broken only by Elsa's soft snores from her room and the occasional creak of the building settling like an old friend sharing secrets. Adrienne lay on the couch, the pull-out bed now her reluctant harbor, the crayon drawing tucked under her pillow like a talisman against the dark. Sleep came fitful, laced with dreams of empty outlines filling with color, her own hand wielding the crayon, hesitant strokes blooming into something whole. Bernard had retreated to his room with a murmured good night, his presence lingering like the candle's smoke, faint but insistent. She didn't touch the blazer, mended and folded on the armchair, but her eyes strayed to it often, the stitches a silent promise in the waxing moonlight. Dawn crept in on Saturday, unhurried and golden, slanting through the curtains to paint the apartment in hues of honey and amber. Adrienne woke to chaos, not the orchestrated kind of her former life, with assistants buzzing like bees around a queen's schedule, but the joyful, messy whirl of a home alive with possibility. The air hummed with sizzles from the kitchen, the sharp tang of batter hitting hot butter, and Elsa's giggles cascading like spilled bells. Flour dust moted in the sunlight, tiny motes dancing in beams that caught on Bernard's tousled hair as he wielded a spatula like a conductor's baton, his grey tee dusted white at the shoulder. "Flip it like this, quick, before it rebels." Bernard's voice boomed low and playful, guiding Elsa's small hands on the edge of a mixing bowl. The girl stood on a step stool, curls tied back with a crooked ribbon, her face a mask of concentration and mischief as she poured milk with more enthusiasm than precision. A splash hit the counter, eliciting a mock gasp from her father. "Oh no, the pancake rebellion has begun." Adrienne eased up from the couch, ankles still tender but bearable now, the bandage a familiar ache. She limped to the archway, drawn by the scene despite the warning bells in her chest. Joy, this unscripted, flower-flecked variety, felt dangerous, a siren's call luring her toward hope she couldn't afford. Hope was a vulnerability, a crack Damon could exploit, a boardroom whisper that could topple her if she softened too much. Yet here it bloomed, golden sunlight flooding the kitchen, laughter echoing off the walls like anthems to ordinary miracles. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed as if to hold herself intact, watching the trio's orbit, Elsie flinging batter globs that sizzled on the griddle, Bernard dodging with exaggerated dives, his broad frame comically agile for a man built like an oak. "Morning," he said, spotting her, his smile easy but edged with that quiet watchfulness, the same gaze that had pinned Damon in the alley. He wiped his hands on a dish towel slung over his shoulder, the motion pulling his shirt taut across his chest, scars peeking at the cuff. "Joined the fray." Elsa's declared it International Lopsided Pancake Day. The girl spun, eyes lighting like sparklers. "Yeah. You can be the queen of flips. Daddy's bad, he makes them look like grumpy clouds." She thrust a whisk at Adrienne, batter dripping from its wires, and the CEO in her recoiled instinctively. Suits didn't mix with messes, power didn't pair with play. But Elsa's grin, gap-toothed and guileless, tugged at the seam in her armor, the one cracked open last night by tears and thread. Adrienne took the whisk, fingers closing around the cool metal, and stepped forward, the linoleum cool under her bare feet. "Queen of flips, ha," she said, voice lighter than she felt, dipping into the bowl. The batter was thick, lumpy with enthusiasm, blueberries half-mushed from Elsa's overzealous stirring. She poured a dollop onto the griddle, watching it spread uneven, edges bubbling like secret surfacing. Bernard sidled up beside her, shoulder brushing hers in the tight space, his warmth a steady hum against the counter's edge. No words, just shared space, the kind that spoke volumes in its silence. Elsie chattered through the sizzles, her stool creaking as she supervised. "We make these every Saturday. Mommy used to sing while we cooked. Silly songs about pancakes flying to the moon." The mention hung light, not weighted, grief woven into routine, not a shroud. Adrienne's paw faltered, a lopsided blob hitting the heat with a hiss. "Mommy." The empty outline from the drawing flickered in her mind, and suddenly the kitchen felt smaller, the joy sharper, laced with the ache of what was lost and what might never be. They plated the chaos together, stacks teetering with misshapen discs, some heart-shaped by accident, others resembling abstract art gone rogue. Bernard drizzled syrup in lazy rivers, Elsie dusted powdered sugar like fresh snow, and Adrienne, surprising herself, added whipped cream smiles that wobbled but held. They carried the feast to the table, a scarred oak relic bathed in sunlight, flour dust settling like fairy powder in the air. Laughter echoed as Elsie launched a blueberry at her father's nose, missing gloriously and hitting Adrienne's cheek instead. The girl dissolved into peels, and Bernard's chuckle rumbled deep, a counterpoint that vibrated through the room. Adrienne wiped the berry away, the juice staining her fingers purple, and something uncoiled in her chest, a tension she'd carried like a briefcase full of stones. Joy, dangerous and bright, crept closer, whispering of possibilities beyond boardrooms and betrayals. But fear nipped at its heels. What if this was temporary? A detour before Damon dragged her back, or her pride propelled her out the door. Hope was a gamble, one she'd lost before, her father's promises of freedom that chained her tighter, Damon's vows that veiled control. Leaning into this, with its golden light and echoing laughs, felt like stepping off a ledge. They dug in, forks scraping plates, the table a battlefield of crumbs and grins. Elsie dominated the conversation, legs swinging under the wood. "Guess what I told my class yesterday? About the rainy lady who came to stay." She forked a floppy pancake, eyes dancing. "I said she's like a maybe new mom. The one who knows about big storms and makes them go away." The words landed like a rogue wave, crashing over Adrienne mid-bite. Maybe new mom. The room tilted, sunlight sharpening to a blade, laughter fading to a distant echo. Elsa's class, tiny judges in finger-paint smocks, now holding a crayon version of her in their chatter. Belonging, offered again, this time not in an outline but broadcast to the world. Panic flickered, hot and familiar. Run. Before it sticks. Before Damon hears whispers of defection, or her board smells weakness. But beneath it, a warmth bloomed, Elsa's casual claim, unearned and vast, glimpsing a tenderness she'd glimpsed last night but never claimed. Bernard froze across the table, fork hovering, his silent look locking on hers, eyes dark with layers. Surprise? Fear of overstepping the fragile bridge they'd built? Or something deeper, falling like the flower dust, soft and inevitable? The gaze held, unspoken questions swirling in the golden light. Is this too much? Too soon? Or just right? His jaw tightened fractionally, that quiet sadness from before edging in, scarred hands clenching around his mug. Afraid, perhaps, of hoping himself, after Sarah, after stitching a life from solo threads. Adrienne swallowed, the pancake sweet on her tongue but lodged in her throat. A maybe new mom, she echoed, voice a thread, aiming for teasing but landing on raw. Elsie nodded vigorously, syrup glistening on her chin. Yep. "'Cause you fixed the storm with Daddy. And you laugh like Mommy did, kinda quiet, but real." The girl beamed, oblivious to the microhook she'd cast, reeling Adrienne deeper into the pool. The laughter started then, tentative at first, a bubble in her chest from Elsa's earnest face, the absurdity of Sierra's mommy in a world of spreadsheets and scandals. It built, unexpected, spilling out unguarded, a genuine peel, head thrown back, the kind she hadn't loosed in years, not since college dorm nights before ambition armored her. The sound echoed, mingling with Elsa's squeals and Bernard's surprised huff, flour dust swirling in the sunlight like confetti at a coronation. Joy crested, dangerous but dazzling, washing over the fear, hope flickering brighter, no longer a threat but a spark she might fan. Dorky pancakes, she gasped through the mirth, gesturing at her plate's monstrosity, a blob with one eye and a lopsided grin. But Dorky is good. Bernard's eyes crinkled, the silent look softening to something warmer, his fear yielding to a tentative fall. Dorky's the best kind, he agreed, voice low, the words a bridge extended across the table. Keeps things real. The morning spun on in that vein, plates cleared amid more giggles, Elsie reenacting her class tale with dramatic flair, using a pancake as a prop puppet. Adrienne leaned into it, the shift seismic, her laughter a key turning in a long locked door, allowing the human beneath the title to surface, tentative but true. Bernard watched, his contributions quiet, refills of orange juice, a napkin passed with a brush of fingers, but his presence anchored, the scars on his hands catching light like promises etched in silver. As the sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the flour-dusted floor, they migrated to the living room for clean-up disguised as play. Elsie directing a pancake parade with the bear as Grand Marshal, Bernard humming that folk tune from yesterday, low and lilting. Adrienne joined, ankle propped on the coffee table, her phone, retrieved from the briefcase that morning, charged in silence, lying dormant beside her. Hope felt less like danger now, more like the sunlight warming her skin, but the fear lingered at the edges. What if Damon shattered it? What if her world reclaimed her before she could claim this? Elsie flopped onto the rug, bear in lap, launching into a story of pancake adventures, her voice a river. Adrienne floated on. Bernard settled nearby, guitar in hand, plucking idle chords that wove under the tail, soft, acoustic sighs that spoke of roads traveled alone until now. The microhook tugged again in his glance across the room, afraid or falling. The lines around his eyes deepened, not with sadness but possibility, a man testing the weight of new threads in his mended life. Laughter bubbled up once more, unguarded, as Elsie declared the bear king of Dorky, crowning him with a napkin tiara. Adrienne's sides ached from it, the sound foreign and freeing, years of repression cracking wider under the golden assault. This, flower in her braids, echoes of joy bouncing off walls scarred by time, was a glimpse of the tenderness she'd glimpsed but never grasped, family not by blood or board mandate, but by choice, lopsided and true. But as the chaos ebbed, plates stacked in the sink and Elsie scampering off her crayons, Adrienne's hand strayed to her phone, the screen dark but heavy with ghosts. Hope, she dared to taste it, but danger lurked in every buzz waiting to erupt. It did then, a sharp vibration against the wood, insistent as a heartbeat. The screen lit, name glowing like a curse, Damon. The room's warmth chilled in an instant, laughter's echo snuffed by the buzzer's demand. Adrienne's finger hovered, the golden morning fracturing. What promises would this shatter? She let the vibration pulse unanswered, the screen's glow casting Damon's name in stark white relief against the wood, a spectre summoned from the briefcase's shadows. The phone went silent, but the air thickened, charged with the residue of intrusion, flour dust settling like ash on the table's edge. Elsie paused mid-cram. Bernard appeared at her shoulder, coffee mug in hand, black, steaming, a ritual of normalcy amid the siege. He set it down without a word, then leaned against the wall, arms crossed, gaze following hers to the window. Flashing cameras pierced the streaks, paparazzi lenses glinting like eyes in the gloom. Their shouts a dull roar now. Adrienne. Is it true about the offshore accounts? The hum intensified, tension coiling tighter, the apartment sanctuary shrinking under the assault. You gonna answer that? He asked finally, nodding at the phone, now buzzing anew with a call from an unknown number, likely a board plant. Adrienne's fingers tightened on the laptop's edge, knuckles paling. I don't know. The admission slipped free, laced with the fear that had shadowed her for years. Confrontation meant unraveling, standing ground meant exposure. Damon had mastered that dance, his manipulations a slow poison, starting with I only want what's best, escalating to locked doors and whispered threats. They'll eat you alive without me. Her father's echo. Power is survival, Adrienne. Don't let them see you bleed. But here, with Bernard's steady frame blocking the light, Elsa's crayon drawing taped crookedly to the fridge, a family now with her outline filled in hasty blues and golds, fear began to transmute. Clarity flickered at the edges, sharp as the camera flashes. This wasn't just about Damon or the board. It was a past, the cage she'd mistaken for a castle, built brick by inherited brick. Running preserved the illusion, but standing? That demanded truth, the hard drive's evidence, her voice unchained. The knock came then, sharp, authoritative, echoing through the thin door like a summons. Bernard straightened, hand drifting to the knob but pausing, eyes on her. Your call, he said, voice low thunder. But if it's them, you don't have to face it alone. Downstairs, the reporters swelled, Black cars disgorging more suits, legal eagles with briefcases like battering rams, whispers of injunctions and subpoenas filtering up through the floorboards. Adrienne's phone erupted again. A barrage. Come in quietly, or we go public. Manipulation's claw dug deeper, promising ruin if she didn't comply, salvation if she bent. Fear peaked, a wave crashing. Visions of headlines branding her traitor, Damon spinning the narrative from shadows, her father's disappointment a final lock turning. She stood, ankle twinging but ignored, limping to the window for a better look. Rain began anew, streaking the glass in rivulets that warped the scene below, flashes popping like erratic lightning, reporters jostling umbrellas, a black Sov's tinted window rolling down to reveal a face she knew, her father's fixer, eyes scanning the building like a hawk. The hum of tension vibrated through her bones, the apartment's warmth a fragile bubble against the storm's return. Bernard moved beside her, curtain twitching aside just enough. Looks like a circus out there. No fear in his tone, just fact, laced with that quiet loyalty, the same that had stepped into the alley without hesitation. His hand brushed her arm, brief anchor. You owe them nothing, Adrienne. Not your name, not your fight. She turned, meeting his gaze, afraid or falling. Now clear, falling, with the steady certainty of a man who'd lost and rebuilt, offering his scars as proof. Clarity sharpened, fear yielding to resolve. Running fed the beast, but confronting it? That starved it. She had the evidence, the truth, years repressed, now demanding air. The knock repeated, louder, followed by a voice through the door. Ms. Thomas? Vanguard Security. We need to speak. Reporters' shouts swelled, cameras flashing through the rain-streaked panes, capturing shadows of the life clawing back. Adrienne's breath steadied, the shift seismic. Fear to clarity, a lens focusing on the past she must face, not flee. Damon's texts burned on the screen. We can talk. Just you and me. Like old times. Old times. His hand on her wrist, twisting love into leverage. No more. She crossed to the door, Bernard a step behind, his presence a shield without smothering. Hand on the knob, she paused, the microhook tugging. Run again, or stand. The storm outside mirrored the one within, rain lashing windows, flashes illuminating the choice. You don't have to open it, Bernard murmured, close enough for his breath to stir her braids. They only see your name, not you. The dialogue pierced, simple as his stitches, profound as his scars. Name, CEO, heir, prize. You, the woman who'd laughed over dorky pancakes, traced crayon outlines, wept in candlelight. Clarity flooded, washing fear clean. She must confront, not cower. For the girl napping inside, for the man beside her, for the seam in her soul begging to hold. The knock hammered. Ms. Thomas. Open up. She twisted the knob, door cracking to reveal suits and suspicion, cameras flashing wild through the hall's gloom. But her voice emerged steady, laced with the steel reborn. Not without my lawyer. And tell Damon, it's over. The fixer blinked, rain dripping from his coat, the hum of tension peaking as reporters surged. Black cars revved below, a retreat half-formed. Inside, Bernard's hand found her shoulder. Loyalty quiet but ironclad. You don't owe them your soul. As the door clicked shut, sealing the storm outside, Adrienne turned to the laptop, files opening like wounds airing. Evidence scrolled. Falsified ledgers, offshore shadows, Damon's digital fingerprints. Fear had turned to fire, clarity demanding confrontation, her past no longer a chain but a key. Will she run again or stand her ground? The question echoed, but her feet rooted, Bernard's gaze a vow beside her. The rain hammered on, flashes streaking the windows like defeated lightning, the apartment holding firm against the gale. Hours blurred into a war room haze, calls to her trusted counsel, I've got the drive, bury him, emails firing back salvos of intent to sue, counters to the board's maneuvers. Bernard brewed coffee after coffee, Elsie waking to the fray with wide eyes but no fear, perching on the couch arm to help by drawing storm monsters defeated by rainbows. His loyalty wove through it all, quiet runs to the corner store for takeout, a guitar strum in lulls to ease the edge, words sparse but weighted. You're stronger than their games. By evening, as rain eased to mist and the black cars peeled away, reporters dwindling under legal threats of their own, the laptop glowed with drafts, press release exposing the rot, resignation letter reclaiming her narrative. Damon's final text, you'll regret this. We built this together. Together, his word for theft, her silence for survival. Adrienne leaned back, exhaustion etching her face, but clarity burned bright, no more cages. Bernard settled across from her, Elsie curled in his lap, thumb in mouth as sleep tugged. You did good, he said, voice a rumble in the dimming light. Standing tall. She met his eyes, the microhook resolving, not afraid, fully falling, into her. Had to. For once, it's mine to fight. If that clawback of the old life, the money, the manipulation, the fear flipping to fire, stirred something fierce in you, hit the comments. What's the moment you chose to stand your ground instead of running? The screen beckoned one last file. Damon's empire laid bare. Adrienne's fingers poised, heart steady. Then, with a breath-like release, she closed the laptop, whispering to the empty room, I'm not going back. The words echoed in the dimming apartment, a vow etched into the air like the scars on Bernard's hands, permanent, unyielding. Elsie stirred in her sleep down the hall, a soft murmur of dreams unbroken, while Bernard lingered in the kitchen doorway, his silhouette a quiet sentinel against the evening's creeping shadows. He didn't speak, but his nod, slow, affirming, carried the weight of understanding, the kind forged in his own reckonings with loss. Rain pattered faintly against the window, a remnant rhythm from the storm's retreat, as Adrienne rose, ankle a dull echo of protest but no longer a chain. Clarity had hardened into resolve overnight, the laptop's secrets now a weapon sheathed at her side, briefcase in hand like a shield reborn. By morning, the city hummed with the machinery of consequence, headlines flickering on Bernard's ancient TV, Vanguard CEO missing amid scandal rumors, Damon's face splashed across feeds with that polished smile masking rot. Adrienne dressed in the mended blazer, stitches a talisman against the cold, and borrowed a pair of Elsa's too small sneakers, the girl's insistence ringing in her ears. They'll make you brave, like Mr. Bear. Bernard drove her downtown in his battered truck, Elsie waving from the passenger seat with a crayon-drawn map of the big glass castle, her faith alight against the grey towers looming ahead. You'll win the dragon, the girl said, hugging her fierce before the drop-off. Bernard's hand squeezed hers at the curb, brief, electric. You've got this. And us, if you need. The elevator ride to the 47th floor was her ascent into frost, mirrors reflecting her braids pulled taut, eyes sharpened to steel, the limp from her ankle a subtle sway but no stumble. The doors parted with a chime like judgment, spilling her into the corridor where once her heels had clicked commands. Now, they echoed softer, deliberate, the borrowed sneakers muffling the authority she'd once wielded like a scepter. Secretaries glanced up, whispers rippling like wind through chimes. She's here. After everything. Adrienne straightened, the shift already blooming. Victim no more, but voice, gathering grace like breath before a dive. The glass boardroom she once ruled stretched before her, a crystalline cage under cold white lighting that leached color from the space, turning mahogany tables to ice and leather chairs to stone. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline's indifferent sprawl, clouds scudding low as if the heavens themselves held their breath. The board, 11 faces etched with calculation, sat in rigid array, her father's at the head like a throne usurped, Damon's to his right, suit impeccable, eyes glinting with the predator's false calm. Legal counsel flanked them, briefcases open like mouths ready to devour, the air thick with the scent of expensive cologne and stale ambition. She walked in, heels, real ones now, slipped on in the lobby bathroom, echoing sharp against the polished marble, each step a declaration. The door hissed shut behind her, sealing the room in pressurized silence, the hum of the AC a low growl underscoring the tension. Damon's gaze locked on hers first, a flicker of surprise cracking his facade. How dare you show, quickly schooled into concern, the manipulator's mask. Adrienne, thank God. We've been worried. Sit, let's sort this misunderstanding. Her father leaned forward, silver hair haloed in the white light, voice a gravel whip honed by decades of dominance. This circus ends now. The board demands your resignation. Effective immediately. Hales prepared a transition plan, generous, considering the irregularities. Irregularities. The word slithered, laced with the implication. Her fault, her instability, the alley's desperation spun into narrative of breakdown. Tension coiled, a serpent in her chest, old fears whispering run, bend, survive, as eyes bored into her, board members shifting, lawyers thumbing files thick with fabrications. Damon reached across the table, hand open in mock olive branch. Babe, whatever you think you saw on that drive, it's not what it looks like. We were protecting the company. You. Protecting. The cage's old refrain, his touch once a lock turning slow. Flashbacks clawed, nights in the penthouse, his love bruising her wrist, whispers of your mind to safeguard while he siphoned funds into shadows. The boardroom's cold light sharpened it all, her abuser not just Damon but the system he'd woven, her father's legacy of isolation, the empire's demand for her as product, not person. Conflict peaked, heart hammering against ribs, the limp a phantom twinge as she stood at the table's head, briefcase clutched like a heartbeat. "No," she said, voice steady, slicing the hum. Gasps rippled, subtle, but there, as she unzipped the case, hard drive sliding free with a soft click. "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's theft. Embezzlement. And I've got the receipts." She plugged it into the room's central console, fingers unerring despite the tremor she quelled, the screen at the table's heart flickering to life. Evidence flooded the displays. Ledgers blooming in red ink, offshore transfers timestamped to Damon's signatures, falsified charity shells draining millions while he posed for photo ops. Screenshots of emails, his to shell companies, hers unknowingly looped in, projected larger than life on the walls, the white lighting turning pixels to accusations carved in frost. Gasps erupted now, real and ragged. A board member's hand to mouth, another's chair scraping back, her father's face paling to ash under the relentless glare. Damon's mask shattered, eyes widening, then narrowing to slits. "This is forgery. Lies to cover your breakdown, Adrienne." After that alley stunt, running barefoot like a madwoman. Breakdown. She leaned in, voice rising not in rage but revelation, grace threading the steel. The shift crested, from victim, cowering in rain-slick shadows, to voice, power reclaimed not through dominance but truth, unarmored and unapologetic. "You mean the night you chased me down? The one where your protection turned to threats, where you locked the door and gripped my wrist until I saw stars?" The room froze, echoes of her heels from entry now a memory in the silence, the AC's hum swallowed by the weight of her words. She straightened, ankle protesting but ignored, the limper badge. "I may limp, but I stand taller now." The microhook landed, tension fracturing like glass under pressure, board members murmuring, lawyers fumbling phones, Damon's face twisting from feigned innocence to fury. "You ungrateful, after everything I gave you." He surged half up, but security, hers, called en route, materialized at the doors, a subtle wall. Her father slammed a fist, but his eyes, cold mirrors of her own, held not anger, but calculation crumbling. Evidence scrolled relentless. Wire transfers to his own pockets, board approved under Damon's sway, the empire's rod exposed vein by vein. "I'm not a product," Adrienne said, voice carrying clear in the hush, the dialogue moment a thunderclap in the cold white void. "I'm a person. And this company? It was never yours to bleed." Grace infused it, no venom, just finality, her gaze sweeping the table not as ruler but witness, reclaiming power through the very vulnerability they'd weaponized. Silence fell absolute after the revelation, heavier than the rain's patter miles away, the skyline beyond the glass indifferent to the fall. Damon lunged then, words a snarl, "You'll regret this, you bitch," but hands pulled him back, the board dissolving into chaos, calls to counsel, demands for audits, her father's glare a dagger's promise of disownment. Yet Adrienne stood unmoved, the shift complete, victim transformed, voice echoing in the void they'd built to silence her. She unplugged the drive, zipped the case, and turned, heels clicking once more, now a march of freedom. The doors parted, spilling her into the corridor where flashes waited. Reporters cordoned but clamoring, her statement already leaking via the lawyers she'd tipped. Vanguard heiress exposes fraud. Hale in custody. She limped past, not hiding the gate but owning it, head high as the elevator descended, city lights winking below like stars reclaimed. Free. The word tasted like ginger tea and dorky pancakes, like crayon outlines filled with color. But as the truck's headlights cut the dusk, Bernard waiting at the curb, Elsie waving from inside, the cliffhanger loomed. Where would she go? Back to the apartment's warmth, a seam to stitch further? Or into the unknown, voice leading where power once chained? The drive home blurred in quiet triumph, Elsa's questions a cascade. "Did you slay the dragon, Mama A?" Bernard's hand finding hers over the gishift, silent loyalty avow. Adrienne squeezed back, the skyline receding, her past confronted and cauterized. Grace carried her now, not grit alone. "Hey, if that boardroom reckoning, turning victim to voice, limp and all, lit a fire in you, drop a comment. What's your I may limp, but I stand taller moment? The one where you reclaimed your power with grace? Let's amplify those stories and echo them loud." But as the apartment lights bloomed ahead, warm against the encroaching night, Adrienne wondered. Freedom's path forked, toward the family by choice waiting inside, or the vast horizon calling her newly minted self. The door creaked open, laughter spilling out, but the question lingered, a whisper on the wind. Where to next? The threshold held her for a suspended breath, the creak of the door a hinge between worlds, the cold echo of the boardroom's white lights still clinging to her skin like frost, and this, the golden spill from within, laced with the scent of tomato sauce simmering and Elsa's high-pitched rendition of a made-up song about dragon pancakes. Bernard's voice rumbled beneath it, patient and teasing, drawing her forward like gravity softened by grace. She stepped inside, briefcase heavy in one hand, the borrowed sneakers, now traded for her mended heels, muffling her return on the worn rug. The apartment enveloped her, not as a cage but a hearth, crayon drawings fluttering on walls like captured breaths, the guitar leaning in the corner like a silent sentinel. Elsie spotted her first, abandoning her perch on the coffee table midwhirl, bare tumbling forgotten. "Mama, you slayed it." The girl launched, arms wide, crashing into Adrian's legs with the force of unchecked joy. The impact jolted her ankle, a twinge, but welcome, grounding her in the warmth of small hands clutching her skirt. Bernard rose from the kitchen, apron dusted with flour from whatever dorky delight he'd conjured for dinner, his eyes meeting hers over Elsa's curls. That look, falling, fully now, held no questions, just space. "You're here. That's enough." He crossed in 2 strides, hand brushing her arm, thumb lingering on the blazer's stitch like a vow renewed. "Dinner's almost ready. Welcome home." Home. The word bloomed unbidden, fragile as the marigolds they'd planted weeks back. Wait, no, that was a dream's echo, or was it? Time had blurred in the reckoning's wake, days of depositions and press gauntlets, nights holed up in sterile hotels while lawyers dismantled Damon's web. She'd left them then, slipping out before dawn after the boardroom fall, a note on the counter. "Need to end this right. Back soon. Don't wait." Fear had driven it, not of Damon, but of tainting this sanctuary with a storm's debris. What if her chaos spilled over, drawing black cars to their stoop, reporters' flashes shattering Elsa's rainbows? Better to sever clean, let them heal without her fracture. But now, in the lamplight's embrace, doubt clawed. Had she lost them? The silence in her absence, voicemails unanswered, texts met with Bernard's steady "we are here when you're ready," felt like a chasm, her fear whispering she'd burned the bridge with her leaving. Elsie pulled back, eyes scanning her face with solemn intensity. "You look like a warrior queen. Did the dragon bleed sparkles?" Adrian knelt, wincing only inwardly, and cupped the girl's cheek, thumb tracing a flower smudge. "Sparkles and shadows. But it's done." The words carried the weight of the shift, voice over victim, grace over grit. Yet tension coiled beneath. Had her war left her adrift, the family by choice recoiling from the mess she'd dragged in? Dinner unfolded in fragments of normalcy, spaghetti twirled on forks, Elsa's tales of school dragons tamed by recess bells, Bernard's quiet refills of water glasses, his knee brushing hers under the table, a tether, unspoken. Laughter threaded through, lighter than the boardroom's hush, but Adrian's smiles felt borrowed. Her gaze strained to the window where dusk painted the sky in bruised oranges and golds. Leaving had been survival, returning, a gamble. What if they'd moved on, stitched their seams without her thread? The fear gnawed, a shadow to the joy, as plates cleared and Elsie begged for the garden time. Bernard untied his apron, glancing at her with that steady pull. Balconies calling. Marigolds need company. He led the way, Elsie scampering ahead with a plastic pot clutched like treasure, the sliding door groaning open to the narrow balcony, a sliver of concrete overlooking the alley's distant hum, potted herbs wilting slightly in the corner but resilient. Warm golden dusk bathed the space, turning the railings rust to amber, the air thick with the earth's quiet promise and the faint char of city grills below. Hands in soil, Bernard knelt first, sleeves rolled to elbows, scars silver in the light as he scooped rich black dirt from a bag, packing it around yesterday's sprouts, marigolds, stubborn bursts of orange and yellow pushing through. Elsie dove in beside him, fingers burrowing with glee, soil caking her nails as she patted a mound. "This one's for the sun dragon. He likes flowers that bite back." Laughter bubbled from her, pure and piercing, but Adrian hung at the threshold, briefcase set aside like an unwelcome guest, her hands twisting at her sides. The scene, father and daughter, hands filthy and full, mirrored the tenderness she'd glimpsed but never claimed, now laced with the terror of exclusion. Had her absence carved her out, the spot she'd warmed now filled by routine's gentle mend? Fear crested, hot behind her eyes. "You've lost them." The reckoning took too much. "Come on," Bernard said, voice low over the rustle of leaves, patting the soil beside him. An empty pot waited, dirt mounded expectant. "We've got a spot saved." His eyes met hers, falling deeper in the dusk's glow. No judgment for the leaving, just invitation, the microhook tugging at her frayed edges. She sank to her knees, the concrete biting through her slacks, and plunged her hands into the cool, loamy earth, fingers sifting grains, the scent of fertile promise rising sharp and alive. Tension thrummed, her heart a drum against ribs. This intimacy, hands and soil together, felt precarious. Laughter through tears threatening as she pictured the days alone. Elsa's questions unanswered, Bernard's guitar strums echoing hollow. "I left because I didn't want to drag you into it," she murmured, voice cracking on a clod of dirt, pressing a marigold seedling deep. "The storm. The cars. The flashes. What if I'd lost you both to it?" Elsie paused, small hands muddy bridges between pots, and crawled closer, soil-smeared face tilting up. "But you came back. Like the flowers do after winter." Simple, profound, the child's logic a balm, but the fear lingered, twisting. Conditional love, the kind Damon peddled, revoked at the first flaw. Bernard worked beside her, his shoulder brushing hers in the golden light, hand steady as he tucked a root. Laughter escaped him then, soft at Elsa's wiggle to avoid a worm. "Ew, slimy night." Drawing a reluctant smile from Adrienne, tears pricking hot. The shift began, subtle as roots seeking water. Love, glimpsed in the dusk's warmth, wasn't a ledger of absences and returns. It rooted deeper, unshakable. "You think we'd let a little storm chase us off?" Bernard said, voice gravel-warm, thumb brushing dirt from her knuckle, a touch that anchored, not claimed. "We've weathered worse. Together, even when you're not right here." The words landed, soil crumbling under her palms as clarity bloomed. Not conditional, this love, no tallies of time away, no demands for perfection. It grew, like the marigolds pushing through cracked pots, resilient in the face of her leaving. Tears spilled then, laughter threading through, Elsa's giggles at the worm's sword fight, Bernard's huff at a toppled sprout, warm golden dusk wrapping them in its hush, hands in soil a sacrament of return. "Do you have room for one more flower?" Adrienne whispered, the microhook her own, voice trembling as she held the seedling aloft, its leaves quivering in the breeze. Bernard paused, eyes locking on hers, the falling complete, a quiet yes in the crinkle of his smile. "Always did." Elsie surged then, abandoning her pot to wrap Adrienne in a hug fierce and filthy, small arms circling her neck, soil-smearing braids and blouse. "I saved you a spot," the girl breathed, cheek pressed to hers, the words a key turning in the lock of fear. Laughter broke free fully now, through tears that salted the earth, Adrienne's shoulders shaking, Elsa's peals echoing off the railing, Bernard's chuckle joining like bass to their melody. Hands in soil, golden dusk fading to lavender, the balcony a world unto itself, laughter through tears, tension dissolving into the rich black promise beneath their fingers. They planted on, the marigold taking root in its safe spot, Elsa's hug lingering in the press of dirt-caked knees. Bernard shared a story then, low and lilting, about Sarah's garden, how she'd coaxed tomatoes from window boxes in their first apartment, teaching him that family wasn't etched in stone but grown, one stubborn sprout at a time. She'd say, "Roots don't care about the rain, they drink it." His voice caught, scars catching the last light, but the sadness was softer now, shared. Adrienne leaned into him, shoulder to shoulder, the shift settling deep. Love unconditional, a garden not of bloodlines but choices, watered by storms and sun alike. "Sometimes family is what you grow, not what you're born into," she said, the dialogue moment rising natural as breath, her hand finding his in the soil, fingers lacing mud and memory. He squeezed, the dusk's gold gilding their joined hands. "Damn right." Night crept in gentle, stars pricking the velvet sky as they retreated inside, pots clustered on the balcony like sentinels. Dinner's remnants warmed, Elsie chattering of flower nights while Bernard strummed idle chords, the guitars hum a lullaby against the city's distant pulse. Adrienne sat between them, the fear's ghost banished, not by grand gestures, but this, hands still scented with earth, laughter's echo in her chest, the realization blooming full, love's roots ran deeper than her doubts, unshakable. Yet as Elsie yawned into sleep, tucked with bear and a marigold petal under her pillow, Adrienne lingered at the table, Bernard washing dishes with his back to her, the faucet's rhythm a counterpoint to her thoughts. Freedom's fork resolved, but purpose stirred, a seed from the soil, perhaps, or the reckoning's final gift. Women like her, caged by empires of control, alleys waiting with twisted ankles and whispered pleas. What if? She rose, crossing to him, arms slipping around his waist from behind, first touch unprompted, bold in its vulnerability. He stilled, then leaned back, hands drying on a towel as he turned, pulling her close. The kiss was soft, earth-tanged, a sealing of grown roots. But words pressed, urgent now. "Bernard, I've been thinking." About the garden. About Spot saved. Her voice steadied, Grace carrying her forward. What if we made more? A place, not a cage, but a refuge. For women running from storms, finding their ground. Call it the Elsie House. After her. 4 new beginnings. His eyes widened, then warmed, the microhook reversing, now his to reel. Laughter through tears anew, his forehead to hers. Yeah. You serious? If that moment of realizing love's not conditional, the hug, the soil, the safe spot, melted you a little, spill in the comments. But as Bernard pulled her tighter, the balcony's marigolds nodding in the night breeze, Adrienne felt the shift complete, from lost to found, one petal at a time. Yet the proposal lingered, a seed in fertile ground. What would the Elsie House grow into? Months later, the community center buzzed with life and color, a riot of repurposed joy spilling from every corner like marigolds gone wild. What had started as a sketch on a napkin, Adrienne's midnight scribbles after that dusklit proposal, had rooted deep in a forgotten warehouse on the city's edge, transformed by sweat and stubborn hope into the Elsie House. Walls painted sunflower yellow, murals of rainbow arches climbing the stairwells, rooms furnished with thrift store finds and donated quilts that whispered of second chances. Women drifted through the open doors, some with suitcases gripped like lifelines, others barefoot and bruised, their stories echoing in the hallways like the laughter that now filled the air, raw, reclaiming, resilient. Soft golden light slanted through the wide windows, late afternoon sun gilding the chaos, a yoga class unfurling in the main hall, mats borrowed from a local studio, breath sinking to a volunteer's gentle cues, a craft circle in a lounge, where braided teens twisted yarn into bracelets, sharing snippets of dreams between snips of scissors, the kitchen alive with the sizzle of communal dinners, spices blooming in cast-iron pots tended by hands that had once clutched briefcases or fled. Shadows. Laughter echoed through the open windows, carried on a breeze that rustled the potted herbs on the sills, basil and thyme, planted by Elsa's small insistence during the opening week. They make everything taste like home, she declared, dirt under her nails, and no one argued. Adrienne moved through it all like a quiet current, her blazer traded for a simple linen shirt rolled at the sleeves, braids loose and sun-kissed. The limp from that alley night faded to a subtle sway she no longer hid. Healing was complete in the ways that showed. Vanguard scandal buried under indictments and audits, Damon in a cell with his ledgers as company, her father's empire splintered but hers to rebuild on her terms, or not at all. The Elsie House was her horizon now, a garden grown from that seed, blooming with women who'd run and found ground to stand on. But the deeper mending. That lingered in quieter corners, a tension she carried like a half-stitched seam, vulnerability, the choice to stay open when every instinct screamed armor up. Healing complete, yes, but could she dwell in it? Let the soft parts show without bracing for the blade? She paused at the craft circle, leaning against the doorframe, the golden light catching the beads in a young woman's bracelet, twists of blue and gold, symbols of storms weathered. The group was small today, 5 survivors sharing space with Elsie, now 7 and towering in her determination, her curls tied back with a ribbon that matched the center's walls. The girl sat cross-legged on the rug, tongue poked out as she threaded a leather cord with wooden charms, a tiny marigold, a rainbow bead, a heart-etched rough but earnest. "This one's for you, Mama A," Elsie said, not looking up, her small fingers deft from months of practice. To match the garden. Adrienne's throat tightened, the microhook of the moment tugging at the scar tissue around her heart. Mama. The name had stuck, unforced, blooming in Elsa's chatter like the center's murals, casual, claimed. She sank to the rug beside her, knees folding easy now, the concrete softened by woven mats donated in Sarah's memory. "It's beautiful," she murmured, watching the bracelet take shape, wooden heart sliding onto the cord with a soft click. Vulnerability prickled. These women saw her not as CEO or savior, but as one of them, flawed, mending, human. Staying open meant risking their judgment, their need turning to resentment if the house faltered. But leaving it armored? That echoed Damon's cage, her father's forge, power as isolation. Elsie tied off the knot with a flourish, holding the bracelet aloft to the light, where it dangled like a promise caught in gold. "It's not a wedding ring," she announced to the circle, voice piping clear over the snips of scissors and murmurs of approval. "Just a commitment. Like the flowers, we water 'em, and they stay." The women chuckled, one, a tall mother with fresh tattoos veiling old bruises, reaching over to ruffle Elsa's curls. "Smart kid. Commitments without the chains. Sign me up." The words landed light but deep, laughter rippling through the open windows like wind through leaves, carrying the center's pulse outward. Adrienne extended her wrist, pulse fluttering under the skin, and Elsie clasped the bracelet on, cool wood warming against her, the heart charm settling just so. Commitment. Not a contract like Damon's rings or her father's mergers, but a choice, daily and deliberate. The tension eased a fraction. Vulnerability not a wound but a window, letting in the golden light that painted Elsa's face in halos. Bernard appeared then, framed in the lounge archway, his repairman's shirt swapped for a volunteer apron smeared with paint from the morning's mural touch-up. He carried a tray of lemonade pitchers, condensation beating like dew, his broad frame moving with that quiet economy that still stole her breath. Months had woven them tighter, nights on the balcony with guitars and whispered plans, mornings tangled in sheets that smelled of soap and earth, Elsa's drawings now claiming fridge space beside intake forms and grant approvals. But his eyes, when they met hers over the circle, held that falling depth. Chosen, not needed. Thirsty work, growing roots, he said, setting the tray down, voice a low rumble that cut through the chatter. The group dispersed gently, hugs exchanged, bracelets traded like secrets. As Elsie tugged Adrienne toward the windows, Bernard trailing with 2 glasses in hand. Outside, the center's garden sprawled, raised beds bursting with late summer yields, tomatoes ripening red under the sun's slant, marigolds bordering paths where women walked in pairs, sharing silences or stories. Laughter echoed from the open casements, mingling with birdsong and the distant city hum, a symphony of rebuilt lives. They stepped onto the wide porch, the wooden boards warm underfoot, golden light softening the edges of everything, shadows long and lazy, air thick with the honeyed scent of blooming jasmine. Elsie scampered to the railing, peering at a butterfly flitting among the herbs, but Adrienne lingered by Bernard, lemonade sweet on her tongue, the bracelet's weight a gentle reminder. Vulnerability tugged again, sharper here in the dusk's hush, healing complete, scars faded to silver like his, but staying open? It meant admitting she wasn't the fixer anymore, the CEO who orchestrated empires, the voice that toppled frauds. Here, she was chosen, for her laugh over lopsided pancakes, her hands in soil beside his, her stories shared in craft circles. Not needed for power or provision, but wanted, woven in. You look like you're carrying the whole garden, Bernard said, leaning against the post, his free hand finding the small of her back, a touch that anchored without claiming. The breeze stirred his hair, golden light catching the lines around his eyes, deepened by months of shared labor but lightened by joy. She sipped, the cool tang grounding her, and met his gaze, falling mirrored back, steady as ever. Just wondering if I can keep showing up like this. Without the armor. The house is thriving, intakes up, grants flowing, but me? What if the soft parts scare them off? Or you? His chuckle was soft, echoing faint through the windows where laughter still spilled from a lounge. He set his glass down, turning to face her fully, thumb tracing the bracelet's heart. Soft parts. That's the best kind. Scars and all. A pause, the microhook in his voice drawing her closer. Maybe forever doesn't need a contract. Just this, us, showing up. Chosen, every damn day. The words unlocked it, the shift cresting like dawn after endless night. Acceptance, full and flooding. Not needed, as the savior with deep pockets or the voice that commanded rooms, but chosen, for the woman who'd limped into their alley and stayed to grow. Tears pricked, but they were warm, laced with the laughter echoing behind them, Elsa's voice piping from the railing. Look, Mama A. The butterflies dancing. Vulnerability settled, not as risk but revelation. She could stay open, let the golden light in, because this family saw her whole. Elsie bounded back, lemonade forgotten, and thrust a small pouch into Adrienne's hand. Another bracelet, twin to hers, wooden heart gleaming. For Daddy. So we are all connected. The girl beamed, then wrapped them both in a hug, small body bridging the space, her warmth a conduit for the love that had rooted them all. Dinner called then, the kitchen's call a chorus of clangs and calls, women gathering around long tables set with mismatched plates, stories swapping like recipes. Adrienne wove through it, arm linked with Bernard's, Elsa's hands swinging between them, the centers buzz a heartbeat around her. Plates passed, roast chicken fragrant with herbs from the garden, salads crisp with homegrown greens, laughter rolling freer now, tales of triumph small and seismic, a job landed, a court date won, a night slept without fear. The golden light faded to twilight's glow, open windows framing the stars' first pricks, but the warmth held, echoing in every voice. Later, as the house quieted, beds claimed, lights dimming to nightlights, Adrienne and Bernard slipped to the porch again, Elsie curled between them on a bench swing, her breaths evening into sleep. The bracelets caught the last light, hearts aligned, and Adrienne leaned her head on his shoulder, the shift sealed, Acceptance, chosen in the hush. For the first time in my life, she whispered, voice threading the night air, I feel seen. He kissed her temple, arm tightening around them both. Good. Cause we've been waiting. The swing creaked gentle, a lullaby in motion, laughter's echoes fading to dreams. Healing complete, vulnerability a gift now, not a gamble, the garden forever, roots entwined. Sometimes family isn't found in blood or power, it's in the hands that stayed when everyone else let go.
Thanks so much for watching till the end. If this story moved you, you're going to love what's coming next. It's even more surprising and emotional than this one. Go ahead and click the story on your screen right now, and see you in the next story.